Forrest Bower is running for U.S. Congress in the 3rd District here against Jim Banks. And he is coming on here to give a little stump speech, talk to us a little bit about his campaign and why he's running, what he's running on, and then to answer some of our questions. So as we watch this, you can feel free to add questions in the chat that we will read off, or if you want to ask him yourself, get yourself on stack by just putting stack into the chat, and we will go to you during the question time and you can ask the question yourself. Does that all sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
Awesome. So Forrest, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and a little bit about your campaign.
All right. First thing I want to mention right from the jump is that I appreciate you stopping by, taking a look at this. And the first thing I want to say is at the end, if you have any question that you want to answer on, ask me. One of the worst things I think we're doing right now in politics is this whole wishy-washy. We can't talk about certain topics because it's not going to be popular with this demographic. And by doing that, we're not educating people on these actual policies, so they just don't get fixed. They don't get changed. And I want to be the kind of person who waves the flag for big ideas like universal basic income, canceling student debt, legalizing marijuana, Medicare for all, decriminalizing and then legalizing sex work. I have a lot of things I want to work on, but my lane is in education and families. And the path that got me to the Zoom started at Ivy Tech Community College down on Coliseum Boulevard. I decided that I wanted to pursue my education in early childhood education, and I devoted my life to working with kids and working with families. And I graduated with my associate's degree. I immediately got hired on at a place called Early Childhood Alliance, which is a daycare in Fort Wayne. And I worked there for a decade before COVID struck. And then I was a stay-at-home dad, what I am doing right now with my kids. But in that 10 years is really what led me to wanting to run for this position, which was I'm in a very interesting position working in a daycare as opposed to a school. In a daycare, you spend a lot of times with kids. You don't have spring break, you don't have summer break, you don't have any of that stuff. And I used to work 4 10-hour shifts. I'd work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. And there were kids that I'm not exaggerating, I would spend between 35 to 38 hours a week with. And when you start to spend that much time with kids, and in particular, kids in poverty, because a lot of the kids that went to the center were on sliding fee scales, or it was government funded child credits that they would do, you start to see what their life is actually looks like. You start to see what poverty looks like in children. And it's terrifying. It's terrible. It's heartbreaking. You know, I went into the profession because I love working with kids. And I got a rough life myself. You know, I've been a victim of violent crime before. I've been homeless at different points throughout my life. I have been in low places, and I've interacted with a lot of these people. And the more time you spend with those people, the more you get to see what their life is actually like. And hearing heartbreaking stories from children about, oh, I couldn't sleep because we have bed bugs or lice or police or gunshots or mommy and daddy were fighting. And then we just expect these kids to just come into school the next day, do good every day, same thing. And it just beats you down as an educator. It beats you down working with kids. Because the other thing I did over the last decade, and I still do now, is I volunteered for an organization called Aaron's House for Grieving Children. And if you don't know about Aaron's House for Grieving Children, I could talk all day about it. Essentially, it is a place where kids can go when they have lost their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters. They go and then they have these volunteers. And that's what I was, a facilitator, where essentially they would go in there, they would talk about their feelings, just pretty much just letting them know that everyone goes through death. But what I'm getting to here is those families were not generally the best well off. When you lose a breadwinner, you know, it's not good. And a lot of these families were already in not good situations before that. And you start to see what their lives are really like. And at the end of the day, it really got down to the fact that I was tired of only being able to help 20 to 25 kids at a time. I was tired of having these lengthy conversations with mothers crying to me. And this has happened over the decade working there numerous times about just how bad things have gotten and how we have this poverty cycle where it's like the government is going to help you out just enough to get you out of poverty. But then as soon as you start to help yourself out a little bit, we're going to take away that childcare. We're going to take away that WIC. And then they're back to square one. And it's just, I got sick and tired of not being able to do more. And it really grinds on you as an educator, because when you go into education, you're going because you love kids. Nobody's getting into this like a lawyer or a doctor think, man, I'm going to bank, I'm going to make tons of cash. No, they get it because they love working with children. And when you can't help those kids, it is just so rough. And eventually it just got too rough. And I decided, you know what? I want to help out more of these families. And that's kind of my backstory, long story short. And my first big thing that I want to run on, because I have a lot of flags that I want to wave, but I is my lane. And my lane is education and families. And so the first thing that I really want to do in my bill that I would like to eventually start working on very different, really hard when I get up against Jim Banks and really fleshing out, is to cut our defense spending by $300 billion. And that sounds absolutely insane. But here's the thing you need to know about defense spending. It's a yearly thing. Every year we have what's called the defense budget. Last year, it was $732 billion. Now, to put that into perspective, the numbers 2 through 10 spent a grand total of $726 billion. And those are China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, UK, Japan, South Korea, and Brazil. We spend $6 billion more than all those countries combined. And in case you're wondering, there's 330 million people in the United States of America, and there is 3.4 billion people in all those countries. That's staggering. And why does that happen? Well, it's obvious why it happens. We got people like Jim Banks who are taking $121,000 from big defense last year. And it's just, ugh. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut $300 billion. So the first thing we have to do when we cut this $300 billion, because how are we going to spend the $300 billion, is we need to Republican-proof this bill. We need to say every single person that is affected by this $300 billion cut to improve our internal defense, because that's how I'm going to spin it. Because right now, our defense spending is not doing a damn thing against all the people getting shot every single day all across America. We need to focus on internal defense. We don't need to be spending $22 billion on tanks. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say $30 billion, $40 billion, whatever that is. We're going to make sure that every single person who loses their job as this is going to have a nice safety net. They will be fine. And this is just for 1 year. They'll be back next year. So we're immediately taking that argument off the table. Then we get down to actually fixing America. And I feel like the biggest thing we need to do, and I'm going to get into education. Education is my bread and butter, but we absolutely have to fundamentally change how we view homelessness in this country. It is estimated that 20 billion, with a B, billion dollars would end homelessness. Refreshing your memory, we spend $732 billion on defense spending, and it isn't doing anything right now. Well, it's doing things, but it's not nearly what we want it to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to spend $20 billion. We're going to spend $70 billion, and we're going to completely transform how we view homelessness in this country. That is what we need to do. There is no alternative. And the best way for me to explain why I feel so strongly about this is to talk about the slide example. I have a little slide. And you get on this slide as soon as you start living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, rich people, they got their own parks. They don't need to get on the slide. But as soon as you get paycheck to paycheck, you start on this slide. And to put some numbers, I love numbers. I love facts. I love statistics. Before COVID, 44% of America was living paycheck to paycheck. During December of COVID, 63% of America was living paycheck to paycheck or worse. That's staggering. But where do you go from paycheck to paycheck? What happens after that? Well, eventually you start sliding down. Those extra emergencies add up. Oh, they got injured during baseball, the pop tire, whatever this is, the flood, a mouse chewed through this little cord and now we have to spend $1,000 to replace the thing. That actually happened to me last year. It sucked. Okay. But these things, they eventually add up. And it's really terrible right now. 47% of those 63% of the people, so 63% of the people who live paycheck to paycheck, 47% of them have no emergency fund anymore. That emergency fund is gone. And 8 out of every 10 of those people said they could not cover a $500 bill right now. They can't cover it. $500. So then that begs the question, what happens? Well, they slide down that slide I was talking about. They go into poverty. Now, they don't go into homelessness, because this is a misnomer we have about homelessness versus living homelessness. And it's a huge misnomer we have because nobody wants to talk about it, which is why we haven't solved the problem. Living homelessness is pretty much the fact that you're still able to maintain a life. You're still living. It's just, I crash on this guy's couch. I live with my mom. I live in that seedy hotel down the road where we hear about violence every single week because that is what I am forced to do right now. But they get by. They live, which is why it's called living homelessness. But then there is one more step on that slide, which is just pure homelessness. Now let's think about homelessness. Let's just all brainstorm here together and let's think, what do we think about when we think about homelessness? Maybe we think about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We think about drug addiction. We think about turning tricks. We think about eating out of the trash can. You know who else thinks about that? Every single American who's facing that gun. And right now, the decision is this. Do you want to go be homeless? Or do you want to risk it for the biscuit, so to speak, commit a crime, and hopefully climb up that slide a little bit? We're essentially forcing people to make this decision. Oh, here's your choice. You can either be homeless or you commit a crime, maybe go to jail, maybe you don't. And so we have to take care of the homelessness issue. We need to set up camps all across America where people are going to know it does not matter if you are LGBTQ, it does not matter your religion, it doesn't matter if you're an addict. We don't care. We are going to have a place for you to sleep that is safe. We are going to have food for you to eat, which is healthy. And then we are going to have someone ready to help you when you need that help. Is that dental work? Is that bus passes? Is that getting in touch with this guy named Greg from St. Louis who is totally good for the money? Whatever that may be, we need to get you on that right path. We need to start rehabilitating you. We need to make it so the step from the bottom of the slide from going to homeless to living homeless is not so dang terrible, so people aren't committing crimes as the only alternative. And I believe until we eradicate homelessness in this country, which is possible, other countries have had great success doing these types of things, we're just going to have more crime, and we're going to have poverty that just cycles from generation to generation. So $70 million to homelessness. Now we get back to my bread and butter, which is education. So what do we do with the remaining $200 billion? Well, it's really quite simple. We throw as much money as possible as education, and in particular, every single teacher and daycare worker, and I want to make sure I put an emphasis on that, anyone who is willing to get an educational degree to go work with our children 30 to 40 hours a week deserves to not just get a livable wage, but deserves to live a good, stress-free life. They deserve to live a great life. They have devoted themselves quite literally to making the future of our country better. And right now, we treat them like crap. I know that because that's my field. You know, I have been in many, many schools, and teacher burnout is a massive problem right now. 66% of teachers want to leave their job within the first 5 years of getting into education, and 41% of them do right now. 2 out of every 5 teachers who have devoted their life to working with children, to knowing they're not going to get paid well, are like, you know what? I'm out. I can't do it. And they polled them. They had, why? Why are you out? 25% said standardized testing, which I have a massive plan for, an 8-year plan where we need to completely, fundamentally transform our educational system to allow our teachers to better assess children in different ways and allow children to actually show that they can convey the knowledge in different ways, because everybody learns differently, and you don't have to have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education to know that. It drives me mad. So 25% said point blank standardized testing is why I hate my job. 21% said school administration, which, you know, bosses are bosses. I mean, but those bosses are going to get raises too, so hopefully that will get better. And then 21% said the reality of being a teacher was not what they were expecting, which is why I am right here, right now, instead of in a classroom. Because I am part of that 21%. And these numbers are not going to get better unless we do something about it. And right now, we don't have leadership who really looks like they want to do something about it, especially not in Indiana. They claim that we care about education and families, yet they don't do a dang thing about it. But that's my big bill that I plan on running on. Now, that might change, you know, because obviously, you know, if Joe Biden says, hey, we are going to do, you know, this amazing thing, and Jim Banks is against it, then I'll say, yes, I will vote for this, you know, something simple like that. But there's a lot of other ideas that I want to throw out there. In particular, I'm a strong proponent of marijuana legalization, you know, and people say, oh, it's so radical. It's not radical. 85% of Democrats support it right now. 66% of independents support it. 53% of Republicans are cool with it, yet it doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen? Because of lobbyists. Jim Banks, once again, good old Jimmy B, he took $56,000 last year from Big Pharma and another $46,000 from health professionals. So yeah, you think he's got a strong will to legalize marijuana or Medicare for all? Which, oh, Medicare for all. Oh no, that's a liberal social idea. We can't talk about that. Well, here's the bottom line. 88% of Democrats support it. 68% of independents support it in the most recent polling, and 46% of Republicans support Medicare for all in the most recent polling. The only people who aren't really supporting it are lobbyists, and the people the lobbyists are tricking into thinking it's bad. But we don't talk about it. For many politicians, that's their big liberal ideas. Medicare for all. No, 88% of Democrats are like old news. Yeah, we want it. Tell me about something else. Tell me about universal basic income. Tell me why we need that. Oh, well, I will. And here's the first thing I need to tell you. I am a strong proponent for universal basic income, as I am for a $15 minimum wage. But I do believe that when we implement that $15 minimum wage, and I want to stress that I will vote for that day one, no questions asked. We need to be prepared for the fallout from that, because there's going to be a massive fallout from that. Right now, 45% of the country supports universal basic income. That's not too bad. That's a great leaping off point. And when you really look at those numbers, it becomes much more telling. 67% of people under the age of 30 support universal basic income. 2 out of every 3 people under the age of 30 are like, dear God, we need help. And I understand that. I'm in student debt. I get all that. I get it. I've had to juggle my finances, in the last few years because it's getting close to the end of the month, that sort of deal. I live that life. I have 2 kids myself. They're expensive. They eat me out of house and home. I understand that life. But when you really look at it, 73% of Black adults support universal basic income. Martin Luther King was talking about universal basic income decades ago. This is not a radical idea here. 63% of Hispanic adults support universal basic income. It's the white people, 35%. We're the ones holding it back, which is why we need to be the ones waving the flag. And it just drives me nuts. And the reason why we need it so much is because these jobs are going away. The USA lost about 40 million jobs during the pandemic at its worst point. And it is estimated that 42% of those 40 million jobs are never coming back. They are gone, period. End of the discussion. No one will ever have that job again, except for probably a robot. And once you really start to look at it from a critical perspective, it gets scary. So let's look at, this is from Indeed.com, the top 10 most common jobs right now. Cashier, they're gone. They're on the way out. You've been to a Walmart? You've been to a Kmart? No, you haven't been to a Kmart. You've been to a Kroger? They're gone. Food prep worker, that's working at McDonald's, fast food, something like that, Subway. Think about that. I want you to really think about your typical McDonald's. Which one of those jobs couldn't be replaced by a robot? Which one of those jobs couldn't be replaced by automation? And if you say to McDonald's, you're going to have to pay every single one of them $15 an hour, you know what they're going to do? They're going to phase those jobs out. And we need to be prepared. But it keeps going. Janitor, I don't know if you've been to Walmart late at night. They already have these. They scrub the floor. There's nobody there. It's a robot doing it. Bartender, what do you mean? Just quite literally mixing together different drinks in very specific amounts? Call me crazy, but that's something a robot can do. And they actually have these already. And they're gaining in popularity because they're a really cool novelty. Server, same thing. Pretty much the technology that is in a Roomba could replace a server. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. This table has a microchip. This table is number 16. This is the order for number 16. We have this little robot that will bring the food out to number 16. Like, all these things are easily replaced. Retail sales associate, that's clocking in at number 5. And this one you say, well, that one's going to be a little bit hard to replace, right? No, it's not, because who do retailers compete against? It's Amazon. And Amazon, I don't know if you've seen an Amazon factory recently, but it is a perfect, beautiful combination of humans and robots working together. Maybe not in beautiful harmony, but that's only going to continue to grow. If you think Amazon is going to be getting less robots, I got bad news for you. That's not going to happen. And once they start automating away those driver jobs, and I'm not saying self-driving cars, necessarily drones. Like, once they start getting the permission to just have you drone your toilet paper in 2 hours, it's going to be better for everybody. But those jobs are going to be lost. All these jobs are going to be lost. Labor is the next most popular one, which is obviously going to go away. That's just physical labor. Office clerk, talking on the phone. When's the last time you called a big company and you actually talked to somebody on the phone first without talking to a robot? Those are the top 10 most common jobs in the United States of America. And when they get automated away by billionaires who are actively racing other billionaires to see who can get rid of them faster, they're not coming back. And I don't know if you noticed, but all those jobs are low-skilled jobs. Those are low-education jobs. So this massive group of uneducated people are about to get thrown out of their jobs. And all these other jobs that we would normally tell them to do, go work at the grocery store, go do this, go do that, they're not going to be there, which is why we have to have a safety net in place, because these people, they might already be on that slide we talked about. They might already be the 63% living paycheck to paycheck, but how long until they slide down that slide to living homeless and then they have very few choices. You know, we have got to get in front of this as a society. And I didn't even talk about driving jobs. Truck driving is the number 22, you know, but still driving jobs. Once self-driving cars really do become the thing that they will be. And I think it's only a matter of time. No one's like, yeah, 30 years from now, self-driving cars sounds crazy. No, they're coming. They're coming. We should not wait until Elon Musk says, yep, we perfected it. We've got it. You're good to go. Elon Musk has already talked about pretty much killing the taxi industry by saying, yeah, hopefully in a couple of years, your Tesla will be able to drive itself while you're not using it and be a taxi. And you know what's going to happen? A bunch of really rich people are going to buy a boatload of Teslas, and they are going to it's just going to be another industry that is completely destroyed and gone, and those jobs will be gone. And those side hustles that so many people rely on right now, they are gone. And we have to be prepared for that. You know, but hey, if we're going progressive, we're really going liberal, we need to talk about decriminalizing and then eventually legalizing sex work. And that is not a topic that anybody really wants to talk about. It's unpopular. That'll never play in Indiana. Well, the bottom line is, by not talking it, we're just never going to fix it. And here's the thing. As of January 2020, 52% of people polled already were cool. They're like, yeah, we should decriminalize sex work. 52%. We already have the majority of the people. And then it's like 13% said they were unsure, which means if we educate those people, there's a good chance we're probably going to snag about 10% of them, which means we got 62% of the population on this. And it needs to get done. It's something nobody talks about. But there are really two types of people in the sex industry: the people that want to be in the sex industry and the people that don't want to be in the sex industry. And both of them are going to benefit from decriminalizing, then eventually legalizing sex work. And it disproportionately affects the LGBTQ community. You want to talk about Trans Lives Matter? We need to start doing things like this. These are the policies that nobody wants to talk about, but I will wave those flags. I will put that target on my back, because the bottom line is, the last two times we went up against Jim Banks, we have gotten our faces crushed. And we want to talk about, oh, it was a good moral victory. We hit this certain percent. No, I don't want a good moral victory. I want the people of Indiana to unleash me on Jim Banks and let me get up in him. I want to get in him with so many facts. I want to talk about the things that he's done. I want to talk about his absolutely atrocious voting record. I want to talk about how it just gets me so frustrated. But that's pretty much who I am. You know, I want to cancel student debt. I want marriage counseling for all, minimum wage, all that good stuff. But if you have a specific question, I'm more than happy to add on to something or answer something. But that's me. That's Forrest Bower. And if it looks like something you might want to support, please consider checking out the Facebook, the Twitter, or my Act Blue. But yeah, Q&A. Let's go. Down.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Forrest. I appreciate that. If you could you put, or maybe Jack, you have it ready, put your Act Blue link in the chat so people have it. And everyone else, if you have questions, go ahead and add them in chat, or put stack if you want to ask the question yourself. Kara, go ahead.
Hey, Forrest.
Hey, Kara.
You have great points, and I'm super excited about you. But one of the last things you said was you want to debate Jim Banks, and he has been avoiding public events and avoiding debating. So do you have a plan for if he won't debate you?
I'm a big proponent of naming and shaming people. So if Jim Banks won't debate me, I will take every single opportunity I have in front of a camera to call him out for that, to ask him why he's so scared to talk about topics that are popular with Republicans and Democrats to point out all of his inadequacies. Because the bottom line is, now is our chance to go big. Because the bottom line is, Republicans don't even like Jim Banks at this point. So if we give them a reason to follow, if we give them an idea to latch onto, I believe we can knock him out. Send him back to Fox News and his $100,000 castle up in Columbia City. I mean, now is the time. Centrism is not going to get it done right now. We need big, bold ideas, especially in a midterm election, that are going to get people to come out. Because you know who's going to come out? Republicans are going to come out. And we need ideas that are going to get Democrats to come out. Hopefully that answers the question.
Kara, is that good? Got it. Question from Thomas in the chat. So he wants to know what differentiates you from the other Democratic candidate, John Stevens.
Well, that really is something that I try myself to figure out. And so I went to his website, I looked on it, universal health care. That's his big progressive idea. But once again, 88% of Democrats support that. That's not enough. I support that. Mandatory minimum sentencing. Him and I are on the same boat on that. Ending cash bail, ending nonviolent drug possession, protecting unionization. All those things, that's the majority of his ideas that I've seen him present. I agree with every one of them, and I would vote for every single one of them. So really then it comes down to what else you got. And I've got a lot that I would love to talk to him about. And hopefully in the future, me and John will get a chance to discuss those issues and how we think Indiana can best move forward. You know, I would love to know his stance on marijuana, and you know, he's talked about Medicare for all, but a lot of these other issues that are issues that can get people out to vote. Like if we actually start taking universal basic income seriously and people start to realize, oh wait, we can actually make this happen. If I vote for this dude, I can actually start getting checks every month and my family is going to be better off. You know, because there's the thing, the universal basic income, I know is going to be one that people think is just way too progressive, but it's not. It's already in Alaska. You know, they have that with oil. They were like, oh crap, we made a whole bunch of money on oil. We're just going to start giving it out to the people. And Alaska is a super red state and they love their universal basic income. You know, what was it called? It's the child tax credit, which is a big deal right now, especially if you're a family. I got news for you. That's universal basic income if you have kids. They're essentially saying if you got kids, we're going to give you half this money when you do your taxes, and then we're going to give you the other half every single month. So all we got to do is expand upon that. Stimulus checks are wildly popular. So we just need to rephrase this. We need to come at this from a different perspective. We need to say, maybe we don't call it universal basic income. We say monthly stimulus checks. You know, we play ball. We see what's most popular, but I think monthly stimulus checks is the way to go on this. I'm glad I kind of want to do that now, but yes, hopefully that answered the question. Sometimes I get lost train of thoughts. I got attention deficit hyper disorder.
Thomas, go ahead and follow up in the chat if you have any follow-ups. Next on Stack, we have Chad. Chad, I don't think you're muted, so go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So real quick, you said cut $300 billion from defense, right?
Yes.
And you said $70 billion for homeless.
Yes.
And then I'm guessing the other $230 for education reform.
$30 billion I would use to Republican-proof the bill and pretty much make it, or whatever number that would be, $30 to $50 billion is, hey, this is a golden parachute for all these hard workers who are going to lose their job making tanks or making jets or doing whatever. We're essentially saying no one's going to get hurt by this except for big defense contractors. And news for you, America doesn't give a damn about them. So okay, that's where the other 30 million would most likely go.
So that's still like 200 billion left. So is that universal basic income, Medicare for all?
Oh, no, that is going to go into a raise for every single teacher and daycare worker in the United States of America. And I apologize if I did not mention this on that Post-it note. So yes, pretty much the easiest way to do that, to cut through red tape, would be to add it as a tax credit in the back end for educators and childcare workers. So we wouldn't have to worry about state laws or anything like that. It would just be when you file your taxes, if you work X amount of hours with children, you would get this big sum.
Okay, so we've got 300 billion, but you haven't said how you're paying for Medicare for all or universal basic income.
Well, I will lean into that because the thing is, I would point to Bernie Sanders. I would point, same with the universal basic income, I would point to Andrew Yang. I would point to the people that is their lane. My lane is in education and families. Universal basic income, I want to support that, and I will wave the flag and all that good stuff and the value-added tax, but I will point people to say, this is my idea. Bernie Sanders' idea for universal base or for Medicare for all is my idea as well, because I'm completely out of my element in that. I know it needs to happen. We all know it needs to happen. 88% of Democrats know it needs to happen, but that's not my wheelhouse. I'll vote for it. I'll pound my chest for it, but I'm not going to pretend to stand up here and sound like I'm super educated on it.
Okay. I mean, I guess I look at it as if I was a voter in Northeast Indiana and then someone said, I'm for something, but I don't quite know how it's going to work or how it's going to pay for it, but it's part of my campaign platform, I would get to wonder, like, well, then why are you even talking about it?
Because it needs to be talked about, just like decriminalizing sex work. Because if we don't talk about these topics, people are going to think they're more. Here's the bottom line. If we don't talk about things, they sound more progressive. They sound like, oh, we can't talk about that because it's progressive. But if we talk about it, if we bring it out to the masses, like Andrew Yang did with universal basic income, pre-Andrew Yang, universal basic income was polling real low. But then all we did was he changed the narrative. We started to actually discuss it. We started discussing decriminalizing drugs and the effects that it's had in other countries. And when we as Democrats don't talk about that, nothing happens. So we have to talk about that. And yes, I do agree with you. I need to find a better way to phrase that I support it and why I support it. I agree with you. This is my first time at this, my first speech. I'm an educator by trade. You know, the last 10 years, I work with kids and families. So coming up on the Zoom call, my heart's beating a mile a minute. So I appreciate you calling me out. And quite honestly, every single one of you, if you find holes in my argument, punch it. Let me know. Because I want to strengthen this up. I don't want anything for Jim Banks to cut through. And yes, as we progress closer to that date, I'm going to be cranking up my campaign into more gears. Because right now, I am a stay-at-home dad. Today, I walked to the library. I made lunch. I did a bunch of things. But once my kids go back to school, I'm going to start volunteering, hopefully every single day at different events. And really just starting to learn more about how the bills are made, how the law, well, not how to construct a bill, and what is in a bill and all that stuff. But right now I'm just saying I would vote for it. I support that idea. And I feel like most people, now maybe not the people in this Zoom who want specific details, are gonna be like, oh, this guy wants to legalize marijuana. They don't ask questions. Oh, this guy wants to legalize Medicare for all. This is why he wants free marriage counseling. I don't think they necessarily look at the X's and O's. I think we just need to give them that idea to be excited for.
Okay.
Cool. That good, Chad? Okay, next on stack is me. I wanted to ask you, you answered one of my other questions already just there. In the news recently has been the big, basically Israel's ethnic cleansing of occupied Palestine. I want to get your thoughts on the Israel-Palestine relationship and situation, briefly, if possible.
I will be quite frank with you. There's no good answer. I mean, there is no good answer. Like anything we do to try and help the situation is going to be a temporary solution because we do not have the power to go over there and fundamentally change it. And we've tried to do that. We have tried to step into other people's areas, into other people's countries and just say, you know what, this is how you're supposed to do it. And honestly, I think we need to take a hands-off approach on it. And I know that is not a popular answer. But like I said, I'm going to tell you my honest opinion because I want you to know where I stand on it. Whatever is going to have us sending less troops and spending less money is what I will support. You're muted.
Sorry about that. So just a quick follow-up then. We give Israel like $4 billion a year in defense funding. Do you support that? Or would you be interested in cutting that?
Oh yeah, cut. Trust me, $300 billion. That I would love to cut even more than that. I'd love to just say, hey, how about we just take it off this year? We just spend that whole $700 billion and we work on internal defense. We work on protecting American citizens and American families. And I know that is a heartless answer, but the bottom line is we have people getting left behind, you know, and when you work with those people, when you see those people every day, you know, it's just, I feel like we need to be helping them more.
Gotcha. Thank you. Ben, next on stack.
All right. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, ask a little bit about like universal basic income. Because I like the idea of universal basic income, but when we talk about the Andrew Yang's approach to it, it seems to me more like, well, automation's going to like replace all these jobs. So we need to like pay people to help them survive. But then what's next? Like it just, all it ends up. So it's just basically giving people pennies while corporations continue to get like powerful, just like to help slightly balance out the things, but it doesn't really do anything to prevent like corporate power or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it's why is like the emphasis on like, oh, automation's coming, so we have to like pay people to help them out instead of like actually like fighting corporations and fighting automation and like giving people like decent jobs?
Well, I want to unpack this. I want to answer everything. So tell me if I don't answer something, please. First thing is it's called a value added tax. It's very popular over in different parts of Europe, but it pretty much makes it a lot harder to weasel out of taxes. So in essence, that's where a huge portion of this is going to come from, because those billionaires running these companies are going to be the one who's going to have, they're going to be the ones that have the automation. So we have to hit them somehow. So essentially the value added tax takes out the money at the point of service for everything. You just bought a cheeseburger, value added tax comes out of that. You know, every single step along the process is going to get taxed, which makes it harder for them to escape the taxes. Because the other thing about just saying, hey, we just need to give people more jobs, is America's not good at job training. Like, we're just not very good at it, like in general. And it's like, and these jobs, like what jobs, we can't just pull jobs out of thin air. Like, they're going away. Like, I listed the top 10, like those jobs are gone. So how are we going to create new jobs? Are we going to task the government with creating new jobs? Because I know that's a very popular Bernie proposal, is that we're going to do this. We're the American Jobs Plan, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not against that. But I believe universal basic income is going to allow us to actually create more jobs more naturally. Because, you know, let's say it's $1,000 a month. Most people are not going to be happy living on $12,000 a year. So they're going to continue to keep working. Or maybe, and this is the hope, they're really going to focus on their side hustle, whatever that may be, their Etsy, their YouTube channel, their Twitch, their this, their that. And then if that grows, then they will naturally, hopefully, stimulate the economy and be creating jobs. Because, you know, my buddy Adam comes to mind. Like, if he had a universal basic income, he'd start making board game tables for people. And I'm sure he would hire people. And then that would turn into a business that would create profit. And it's just, I see what you're saying. Creating jobs is a great idea. It's just, I don't see how we really do it. And what jobs do we create for people? You know, it's just, I feel like there's too much water coming out of the bottom of this boat for us to just say, we're just going to patch it. We got to get rid of the boat and try something different.
Okay, cool. Ben? Next on stack, we have Lauren.
Awesome. Sorry, guys, I'm multitasking here. 1 second.
Hey, Lauren.
Okay. Hi, I apologize. I missed the first 5 minutes of your talk, so forgive me if this was addressed, but
No worries.
what exactly do you mean by marriage? Was it counseling you said?
Yes, this is just one of those things. It's actually an Andrew Yang idea that I really latched onto, which is that I believe we need marriage counseling for everyone. Like, if I believe that the amount of money we could save as a country by offering people this free help, and we need to normalize not just marriage counseling. Like, that's part of the Medicare for All and why we need it so much. It needs to be dental. It needs to be mental health care, because mental health care is just, I'm not even gonna get started on that. But marriage counseling, I would lump into that. We need to help strengthen these families, because it is shown time after time after time. Every single statistic will tell you that if you come from a single parent household, you are exponentially more likely to have a whole boatload of bad things happen in your life. And I am actually a testament to that. My parents were divorced at a very young age. My mother was murdered at the age of 12. And my life spiraled just down. And, you know, it could have went a completely different way if there was more help. And I see this all the time at Aaron's house too, where I volunteered. You know, these families just trying to keep it together, especially after losing a kid. You know, every marriage has issues. And I've been fortunate to be married to my amazing wife for 8 years. I have 2 boys. I love my wife, but we've had our struggles. But we need to normalize not just marriage counseling, but mental health care in this country. I firmly believe that the president should have his own mental health care professional on staff. We need to normalize these things. We need to talk about issues, or else they will not get talked about. So yes, I am a huge proponent of marriage counseling for all. The X's and Y's and the X's and O's of that, I do not know. I would let someone else who's a politician who that's more in their lane do that, and I would support it, and I would vote for it, and I'd co-sponsor the bill, and however I could potentially help. But yeah, I think it's essential. I think it's throwing away money not doing marriage counseling for all.
For sure. Okay, cool.
All right, excellent. Barbara said she loves your enthusiasm and passion.
Thanks, Barbara. I work with kids all my life, so I'm always upbeat.
Haley asks, do you support the BDS movement, or at least support not punishing people who participate in BDS?
Is that that's the sexuality, the BDSM?
No. This would be.
I do apologize. Once again, I'm an education major at heart, so you will have to fill me in on a couple of these things.
So BDS would be the movement to divest and sanction from Israel, going back to Israel, Palestine, meaning not buying goods from Israel, not investing in Israeli businesses, and potentially levying sanctions on them for their treatment of the occupied territories, specifically Gaza and the West Bank.
I'll stick to my original answer, which is whatever is going to allow America to better spend that money. So whichever decision, quite honestly, is going to save us the most money is the decision that I would pick. And I do believe I would love it if we just detached ourselves from so many of these places where we currently have footholds all around the world. I would love to send all of our troops back, except for the ones that are absolutely necessary, because why? Why do we need these troops all over the world? We're not keeping peace in most of these places. It's just all adding up to our $736 billion defense bill. So anything that's going to cut that, I am a proponent of, for the most part.
Gotcha. It's not really about defense spending, but you can look into it more.
Yeah, and like I said, that I will have a list of things that I need to definitely look into more. And that was one of them that I quite honestly was going to research a bit more, because foreign policy is something that's going to be one of my weak areas. I will fully admit that, which I know is unpopular, but hell.
Gotcha. Haley, feel free to add in any follow-ups if you want. Chad, back on Stack. And we can do this for probably just another couple more minutes, and then we got to move on to our regular meeting. Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Forrest, you talked about testing for students in education. That's traditionally left up to states to decide how those tests are administered and what students are tested on. Are you advocating for the federal government to get involved in setting testing standards and deciding what students are tested on? That I worry in Indiana people would take that as a Common Core type of thing again, and we'd have resistance.
I will give you my basic idea, which is that we take more of a hands-off process, because really at the end of the day, why do we hire teachers? There's two reasons: to educate our kids, and then to assess our kids to make sure that they understood that education. Currently, we do that primarily through standardized testing, which, as we talked about, people hate. 25% of teachers want to quit their jobs because of that. Kids get stressed out because of that. We force these kids to cheat. We create, and I did it. I'll be brutally honest, in high school, I cheated. I cheated on tests. I found different ways to get around it because that was the only way that I was going to pass. It was an easy, quick way to do it. So what we need to do is strip it back and need to let these teachers take off the training wheels and let children convince teachers in whatever way they want to do that they have understood in the knowledge. So is that making a diorama? Is that writing a poem? Is that doing a song? Is that a PowerPoint presentation? Whatever that may be, we trust these teachers. They're still going to know if Billy didn't read the book. If Billy makes a crappy poem that doesn't have anything to do with the Civil War, it just drives me mad. And the thing is, let's go back to those numbers. 21% of teachers, or 25% of teachers hate standardized testing, and 21% of teachers said the reality of teaching was not what they thought it was going to be. And I will tell you, I've been in many, many education classes. There are two primary reasons why people get into education. First one is because they love kids. Second one is because they had a teacher that just inspired them, that truly just touched their heart and soul, and they wanted to pass on that knowledge, and they wanted to do that same thing for kids. And right now, neither of them are able to do that because of standardized testing. When we have these teachable moments, and if you don't know, in education, teachable moment is when children are just genuinely fascinated by a particular topic. And when you have those as an educator or as a parent, you latch onto those, because that's how careers flourish. Little Billy was absolutely fascinated with bugs, and now he's a paleontologist. But in our current educational system, we cannot do that because teachers' jobs, are on the line with these standardized tests. So I'm not saying we get rid of standardized tests. I think we need to actually open it up. And I think the best way to do that is a smooth 8-year transition. So the first year, it will just be kindergartners all around the country who now have this. And, you know, it would be a massive undertaking. I will be brutally honest about that. And then the second year, it's kindergartners and first graders, and then kindergartners through second graders, until eventually it's just how we do things. We don't lean so much on these standardized tests, which once again are not good for anything. And the system itself is like 100+ years old. Why are we still using it? But that's my basic major idea, is that we let teachers assess the kids. And it's not just that, but by doing that, we allow kids to fine tune a craft. You know, let's say Billy really likes making dioramas. And so Billy just spends his entire elementary, middle school, and high school, and when he can, when it's an option, obviously if it's a math test, you probably can't do that, but when it's an option, he focuses on that. He's developing a skill. He's developing a craft. He's developing something that he can lean onto so he doesn't have to go commit a crime if he ends up falling into, you know, living homelessness. Whereas now, what are we teaching kids when we give them standardized tests? Learn this, cram it into your brain, regurgitate it during the test, forget about it because you need to cram more crap into your brain next time. And teacher burnout rates do not lie. Children, I mean, it's just the way we do it right now is just so insanely backwards, and it just drives me nuts. And I've heard so many teachers in my decade working with families and working at schools, and I've worked in private schools, I've worked in public. Well, I've done student teaching. Let me rephrase that. Private schools, public schools, Montessori schools, all sorts of different schools. It's the same everywhere. No one likes standardized tests in our current system, yet no one's doing anything about it because we're not talking about it. And that's what I want to do. I just want to spotlight these things because I have a feeling if teachers saw what I was saying here, they'd be like, oh, well, yeah, obviously kids learn in different ways. So we should embrace that. And yes, there are some kids who will still want to do standardized tests. You know what? That's an option too. I just think we need to open it up. And hopefully that answers the question.
Not really. So are you proposing to federalize the student testing program, have the federal government take over standardized testing in all 50 states?
No, I'm saying we open that up. I'm saying we don't just lean on the standardized testing, which is what we do now.
Right, but states get to determine it. So the only way your plan would work would be if the federal government instituted, which
100% yes.
The states would say no. So therefore you are saying that the federal government should be overseeing standardized testing?
I am saying the federal government should take this and do it. Yes.
Okay.
I don't like how you keep focusing on the standardized testing. I feel like you're weaseling me into that. I want to widen it. I do not believe that standardized testing should, great questions. I don't believe that standardized testing should be the only way. And I'll be brutally honest with you, this is why I didn't go into it that much. My first policy is to gut defense spending. And that one is just going to be picking and choosing and figuring out, there's $22 billion. We're doing this. They hire 100 people. We need to do that. That's going to be much, much easier. This is going to be something I'm going to have to focus a boatload of attention on figuring out the way to do that, because there normally is some sort of sneaky workaround to doing it. Like legalizing marijuana could be done with a sign of Joe Biden's pen right now. If he hired, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the person who decides, level 1, level 2, level 3 substances, that sort of thing. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I don't know, which is why I didn't actually mention it that specifically. Right now, it's just the idea, which to be quite honest, I've had this idea for a very long time. It's just when you really learn about how children's brains work, which is what you do when you take education classes, you start to realize that the way we do it is it's the worst way to do it. Like America somehow has just found the worst way to do just about everything. And I think part of the reason why is because we have Democrats who want to go halfway. They don't want to say the scary things. And when you go halfway, Republicans will absolutely destroy it. And they will pare this down until it's something that doesn't work really well. And then they point to it and say, look, that stupid idea didn't work well in the first place. So I say we go big, and then if they pare it down, well, it's still a great, great thing. But yes, this is something, I'll be honest with you, this is something that is in the future. My first bill would be the $300 billion. This would be the thing that I'd work on after that. Because at the end of the day, the $300 billion is also, we need to hire more teachers. Right now, we're trying to have a 52-man staff, a 52-player football roster, and we got 36 people. We just do not have enough people working in the education field because they're getting burnt out. Every school, and that's one thing I will say across every school and every daycare that I've been in, and that's probably been about 15 to 20 of them in the last decade. everybody's understaffed. Everybody's understaffed. And it's just ridiculous because, you know, that's the worst place to be understaffed. That in the hospital because they're taking care of our children. It just drives me nuts.
All right. Well, if you want to give us some final remarks or anything before we go, but it's about time for us to move on to our normal meeting, Forrest.
Thank you for your time. Oh, sorry. Thank you for your time. And thank you for giving me these things to look into. Because, yeah, I know that when I eventually hopefully get up on stage with Jim Banks, I'm going to need to have things locked up. And as I said, this is my first time. This is my first speech right here. I had it all separated on Post-it notes, but I'm starting to memorize different things. I'm going to get stronger opinions on certain topics that I know people are more interested in. But thank you all. I really do appreciate difficult questions because that's how I get better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Forrest. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.